circles. We go, huh? Okay. See if I can do this. Don't chew my necklace. Oh, okay, you're gonna lick me? All right. Okay, so I am going to admit up front that I'm not feeling quite mentally with it. I'm a little bit sleep deprived today. So I don't know why, but I decided to tackle this video, which isn't really comedic in nature. It's kind of related to some serious / heavy-ish subject matter because it's Jorden Peterson, and he's always got some interesting and quite profound things to share with us. This is titled Jorden Peterson, Why Men and Women Are Different. It's apparently an interview he had with Ben Shapiro. Okay, hold on a second. I don't trust. Okay, I thought she was going to start chewing on my necklace band. This is I guess an interview or something he had with Ben Shapiro. I don't know when. I'm not sure if this is directly on Ben Shapiro's channel or if it's a Jorden Peterson channel or if it's a third party, but whatever. I'll leave the link in the description like I always do. I have seen a couple few of Peterson's videos already where he talks about subject matter like this, so I'm interested to see what this is about. No clue where he's going to go with this, but I'm curious. So let's go ahead and check it out.
Yeah, well, I mean, the gender issue is really an interesting one because one of my professional domains of expertise is individual differences. I'm a personality psychologist, and so I know the gender difference literature, and it's a very solid literature. Well, first of all,
right,
it's very solid. It has a 30-year...
Right, it is. There is science behind the differences between men and women. And I find it quite troublesome that there are certain groups or people with certain mindsets that are trying to blur those lines or to get rid of them or act like they don't exist or to even feel hostile about the fact that there are these differences when it's just pure biology. And well, that was my little rant. The first hasn't even been 20 seconds of him talking. Okay, I'm going to go back a little bit.
It's a very solid literature. Well, first of all, it's very solid. It has a 30-year history. One psychologist got the personality models down, so that would be the Big Five model. All empirically derived, straight statistics, right? Brute force empiricism. Nobody had a theoretical axe to grind with the Big Five, except to say, maybe there are human traits, maybe they're encapsulated in language. We can use statistical techniques to find out what they are. That was it. That's the whole ideology. So very, very neutral as far as ideologies go. 5 traits emerge. Okay. Are there differences between the sexes? Turns out there are. All right. They're not massive, although if you sum them across all the traits, you can separate men and women with about 75% accuracy. So it's not trivial, but you have to sum across all the traits. Then another question comes up. Well, are those differences sociocultural or biological? Okay, we can test that. We'll go around the world. We'll look at cultures. We'll rank order them in terms of the gender equality of their sociological policies. We can do that with broad agreement from the right and the left. Then the hypothesis would be, if gender differences decrease among more egalitarian societies, then the gender differences are sociocultural, or at least more sociocultural. That's exactly the opposite of what was found repeatedly. That's pseudoscience. It's like, no, that's mainstream psychology. Those papers have thousands of citations, and the average humanities paper has 0 citations, right? And then the next most common one has 1. 3,000, that's an unbelievable classic. And here's the other bit of proof. Like you say, well, how do you know that you can trust someone's judgment about a fact? The fact emerges despite their ideological presuppositions. Okay, so...
Well, and see, the thing that is really troublesome to me today, like these days, is that there is, if not a complete ignoring of these facts going on, then an absolute outright denial of these facts, as if they just don't exist, like it's just not even a thing, and how dare you say that it is. And if you do, you're a horrible person for thinking, that there's this thing called science and biology, and that these things are this sort of stuff is actual fact. It's rooted in fact and not something that you just pulled out of thin air. So I don't know where the heck I was going with that. I was just saying, that there is a denial of this. And that's really concerning to me, especially because this sort of trend seems to be growing in certain circles and gaining some type of, I don't want to say validity, but people like this are making so much noise that they are, in a sense, being validated because they're being listened to. And that blows my mind. Just completely blows my mind. It's like we're going backwards right now in a lot of ways, in a lot of different things. And it's kind of scary. I'm not a fan.
The fact emerges despite their ideological presuppositions. Okay, so it's well known that the social sciences and the humanities have a left tilt, and a lot of that's temperamental, and the tilt has become more pronounced. But as Jonathan Haidt has pointed out, there are no conservatives among social personality psychologists, or none to speak of.
Very few, yeah.
Very few, vanishingly few. And if the field has a bias, it is definitely and indisputably a left-wing bias. Okay, so you have to fight that if you're a scientist, right? Even if you're a left-wing scientist, you have to fight that because you want to get to the facts. It was these social scientists who generated the data that suggested that the gender differences not only were real, but that were bigger in egalitarian societies. They didn't do that to grind their ideological axe, because their ideological presupposition was, no, you make the society egalitarian, men and women get more the same. It's like, nope, they get more different. Oh, isn't that something? And so then there's a corollary there, which is, all right,
And honestly, excuse me, I swallowed wrong. I hate when that happens. Kudos to those researchers / scientists / investigators or whatever. Kudos to these people for not trying to force or shoehorn the data in a certain way to fit their perspective or their tilt or their leanings, because there's a lot of the opposite going on in different ways with different people or groups or whatever. So, good for them for actually being concerned more about the facts and fact-based findings as opposed to ideological twists and turns that they try to shape the data into.
Isn't that something? And so then there's a corollary there, which is, all right, you could still say, and they're kind of pushing in this direction in Scandinavia, boys and girls are different. Men and women are different. It looks biological. But because people are malleable, you could push the sociocultural structure harder and harder to minimize the biological differences. Okay, well, first of all, maybe and maybe not. Maybe you'd get a rebound and they'd get even, like, the kids would rebel.
Yeah.
That could easily happen. But let's say, okay, you could. The problem with that is that if you cede that much power to the state, like, you're basically giving the state the right to socialize your kids.
Right.
It's like, you really? Really? You really want to do that? I mean, the people in Israel couldn't do that with the kibbutzes, right? It didn't work. So people aren't going to give up their children to the state, and thank God for that.
Well, I mean, this is one of the big questions that we were discussing earlier, is that we were talking about the polarization.
Well, some people are, and that's scary. Some people are more than happy to.
Thank God for that.
Well, I mean, this is one of the big questions that we were discussing earlier, is that we were talking about the polarization in politics between right and left. And obviously, you're a psychologist, you're a philosopher, but you've been dragged almost kicking and screaming into this political sphere because everything has been so politicized. And so when you cite social science statistics, and they're scientifically based, you're called a racist, you're called a sexist, you're called a homophobe, and
Called Milo Yiannopoulos.
exactly. So why is it that why do you think it is that so many folks on the left who purport to be all about reason and science and objective fact are so willing to throw those out the window the minute that it becomes politically inconvenient for them?
Well, because you imagine that
honestly, I kind of feel like that's not necessarily something exclusive to left-leaning people. I think that anytime a certain narrative doesn't fit a particular agenda, that important facts are going to be just kind of ignored or glossed over or whatever. But what gets me is that it's almost like there's been this weird sort of role reversal in a way between leftists and some people call left-wingers, they call them liberal. I don't like to use that word because I feel like liberalism or the word liberal has been so tarnished by, it's been so, what's the word I'm searching for? I'm telling you, I shouldn't have done this when I'm so tired. Liberalism has been so bastardized by the left, the modern left, that the word liberal has been turned into almost like an insult or a bad word, when the reality is that in a lot of ways, liberalism, or at least, so when I think of liberalism, I'm typically thinking classical liberalism, which is, very similar to things like libertarianism and stuff like that. But the point I was trying to make is that it's almost like there's been this weird role reversal between leftists and right-wingers when it comes to the whole science thing. So a few decades back, 20, 30 back or whatever, you had a lot of denial of certain scientific, whatever by right-wingers, and leftists were all about science and facts and all of this. I'm speaking in general terms, obviously. There's always outliers, but now it's almost like right-wingers are kind of taking up the mantle of being more pro-science, and leftists are kind of, in a lot of ways, poo-pooing science and scientific fact. And it's so weird how this has happened. And I don't know if this is like a boomerang type, not boomerang, but, pendulum type thing happening, or what the heck is going on. But it's really strange. But that's kind of just been a trend I've noticed over the past several years, and it feels like it's growing in intensity. And I don't know if we've reached the peak, or if the peak is far away, or what's going to happen, if things are going to start to shift back around the other way, or if maybe things will just kind of even out, whatever.
The minute that it becomes politically inconvenient for them.
Because you imagine that cognitive systems, or an interpretation of the world, has levels. They're axiomatic levels. Some fundamental presuppositions are more fundamental than others. And you could say, well, the leftists historically, maybe because of their atheistic rationality, are more on the side of science than, say, the fundamentalists of any sort. But when like push comes to shove, you find out how the axioms are nested. There's deeper axioms underneath that, which is that all hierarchies are based on power, and all power plays are based on group identity, tribal identity, essentially. Tribalism. And that the entire history of the world is nothing but a power play between these different identity groups. It's like, okay, well, if the science indicates that some of that's wrong, then do you alter those beliefs, or do you alter the science? And the answer to that question is, well, it depends on how you've hierarchically arranged those. If the science is at the bottom, then you alter your beliefs, right? If the scientific facts are the axiomatic substructure, then you alter your beliefs. If your
Okay.
beliefs are
I was a little lost when he said if science is at the bottom. I thought he meant like if science was at the like the lowest priority. What he meant was if science is the foundation of that, then you alter your beliefs to be in line with science, scientific fact, stuff like that. Okay, I get it now. Whew. This feels a little bit mentally intensive for me right now, and I hope I have made at least a little bit of sense in trying to express the thoughts as they come to me.
axiomatic substructure, then you alter your beliefs. If your beliefs are the axiomatic substructure, then you alter the science. Well,
Right.
we've seen how that plays out.
Yeah.
And one of
Yeah,
the things
yeah.
I've tried to do, so to speak, is
That seems to be happening a lot right now. And I don't know if it's just I'm paying more attention to it now, or I'm more aware of it now, or if this has always been a thing, but I don't feel like this has always been a thing.
science. Well, we've seen how that plays out. And one of the things I've tried to do, so to speak, is to diagnose the axiomatic structure. It's like, okay, what's the metaphysical presumption structure of the radical left? Well, what it is you're basically your group. Your groups are basically engaged in warfare, right? And the warfare is arbitrary, except insofar as it serves your group. Okay. I don't buy any of that. I think that's a route to certain disaster. I think it's a degeneration into tribalism, and that we will seriously pay for it.
Yeah.
Not only because it returns us to tribalism and tribes fight, as the anthropological evidence for that is overwhelming, right?
Well, tribalism, I don't think you're ever going to escape it. It's everywhere because it's built into us as humans, unfortunately. It does feel like it's much worse than it used to be. And I think part of that is because there's just this constant nagging and nitpicking about it. It's everywhere, in your face, all the time. Social media has played a huge part in that. I don't think it's taking us to a good place at all. I think we're regressing. I've used that word multiple times, but I do believe that is just really seems to be pervasive right now in societies, in a bunch of different places throughout the world. Yeah.
Tribes fight. It doesn't even matter if they're chimpanzee tribes. Even chimpanzee tribes fight. So not only do you regress to a tribalism, but you also invalidate the one proposition that's been able to help us arise above the tribal, which is the idea that the individual should be sovereign. And so I think the culture war is about what's the proper framework within which to view human identity, and what's the relationship between the individual and the group in relationship to that identity.
Yep.
And the leftist answer is it's all group and it's all power. It's
Yeah.
like, okay.
Did you know that?
Oh, shoot. I didn't. I can only take but so much of Ben Shapiro's voice. Okay, what was that? What did he say at the end? Oh, yeah, exactly. That is the typical thing right now. Yeah. Collectivism. I think that's the proper word for what he's talking about. Yeah. Okay, well, he kind of trended away from what the title of this video was about, why men and women are different. I mean, that's kind of, that's how conversations go. It happens, but I expected this to be more about that. But I think at least half or more than half of this video was about the other stuff, because I mean, it does tie into it. But I was thinking that, honestly, this didn't even get to the root, the subject matter, why men and women are different. He was just saying that they are. Even in the most egalitarian societies, those differences are even more noticeable, or that they're there. But he wasn't saying why. That just dawned on me, unless I completely missed it in my sleep-deprived stupor. But I feel a little bit misled by the title of this video. And I really don't, I mean, I could rant on and on and on about this stuff that he was talking about, but I'm not in the mood to get myself annoyed. I've already sort of teetered on the edge of it just because the subject matter gets under my skin somewhat. But I don't think I'm going to continue on about it. I've said my piece on this, and I'm just not quite mentally there enough to get into this really heavy. But I was hoping that it would be more about what the title of the video was, and it wasn't. I mean, it's always a joy and a pleasure, whatever. It's always interesting, informative. I guess those are the right words. To listen to what he has to say, like the way he frames what he's talking about. He does, sometimes he gets into stuff and I have to like really turn my gears in my brain on and pay attention, kind of like how when I'm listening to stuff in Spanish, I can't listen to it in the background and be aware of what is being said while I'm also doing something else. I have to have full focus on it. So that's kind of the way it is with Jorden Peterson. I have to really just target my thoughts and focus on what he's talking about so that he doesn't lose me in his explanation about stuff. Because I'm not a super deep thinker, so sometimes I have to, stretch my brain muscles quite a bit to follow some of this stuff. But anyway, well, I'm glad I watched it. I don't feel like it was a waste. I just kind of feel like this didn't really touch on completely what I think it was supposed to, but oh well. Yeah, okay. I don't have anything else. I'm going to wrap it up and maybe go check out a trailer or something. Okay, bye you guys.